Hello and welcome to Data Planet. I'm Emma Davis, and today's guest is Hadar Livne, fractional CMO specializing in helping B2B tech companies establish their marketing framework. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you for having me.
All right. So to start, typically I ask guests tell me about your company. What makes you special? You have this sort of um, nomadic marketing existence as a fractional CMO. So um, let's do sort of a spin on that. Like, what kinds of businesses are a good fit for you, and are you a good fit for as a fractional CMO or VP of marketing? I know marketing, fractional marketing executive, essentially.
Exactly, yes. So, Emma, I work with B2B tech companies usually. They will be at a point where they've grown already, but their marketing hasn't fully caught up with their ambition, I would
Mm.
say.
Mm.
So they typically have a strong product. They might have one person or two handling marketing or some vendors, but they still treat marketing more as a support function, supporting sales, supporting customer success, and so on, rather than a growth engine. They do have data in most cases. I think today it's very easy to track, and measure your data and all your actions, but something isn't clicking for them. It could be the message that is not sharp enough, or they don't have a real marketer leading marketing. Many times it would be the CEO or the CRO. Obviously, they have to run multiple things and can't really be focused on marketing. And what I really bring is, I would say, clarity
Mhm.
on positioning, priorities, and execution.
Mhm.
I think this is something I found very useful for those kind of companies. I'm very hands on. I work end to end, from strategy to execution. It can be in projects or, the ongoing marketing work, day to day marketing work. And I might even hire their full time VP of marketing when they're ready. So yeah, I think that describes the type of companies I love working with, and the one I can really help.
And what's interesting about that is it sounds like part of a successful engagement for you is kind of putting yourself out of business with them. You don't intend to necessarily be their long-term solution. Um, and it also sounds like you're not a temporary stopgap. You're kind of a they know they want to get to that next level. Um, they don't have the marketing chops themselves to know how to get there. And so you sort of come in here, let me meet you where you are, see what your needs are. I'll help address the immediate tactical needs for marketing, but also build a framework and help you get set up with the right team and the right strategy to help you get where you want to go as a business.
Exactly. And I think that's what I love the most about being fractional because first, there's a variety of clients and I can work with multiple clients at the same time. From my experience, most of them, they don't need the full time marketer. Working full time as a full time marketer in the past, it's very demanding. When it's a big company, big marketing team, you work almost, you can work 12 or 14 hours a day around the clock. But for smaller companies, many times it's not the case. And even if they do work a lot, I would find them being not that efficient, probably. So I think, yeah, I can be in touch with my client and supporting them for a while. Or it can be a very ad hoc, I need this event or I need this rebranding right now. And then I would say goodbye. Obviously, we'll stay in touch. And if they'll need me again, I'll be happy to jump in. But I'm setting them up, for success, I would say.
Hmm.
And it really depends. I'm a very flexible person. And I'm happy to, work with a lot of people. I think that's one of the reasons I chose this road as fractional to be
Yeah.
able to do, multiple things at the same time.
Yeah. So let's talk about that road a little bit. What led you to this fractional CMO life? What were you doing prior to this work?
So I led marketing at B2B tech companies, but earlier in my career, I worked in B2C actually, with consumer brands and at an advertising agency, and also as a spokesperson. And I think that really shaped how I think about marketing today. In B2C, you're extremely close to the customer. You have to understand what drives them emotionally, what captures their attention, and if it doesn't resonate instantly,
Uh-huh.
it won't work.
Mm.
And I think that when I moved into B2B, I felt that it was often missing. There was a lot of logic, and data, especially working with tech companies and products and technical people. They swim in data, they swim in logic, but there was less focus on how the message actually lands.
Mhm.
And over time, I realized my biggest impact was actually helping companies, or helping the companies I worked at, to get that clarity right, and then working with them to actually execute on it. And I think that, again, that's what led me to the fractional model, being able to jump in quite quickly, understand what's going on. Put my hands in, and understanding what's going on myself, and then being able to deliver it outside to the customer.
Awesome. And so you started touching on this a little bit. We talk on this show so much about data. It's in the name. It's Data Planet. Um, but really, this show is about growing businesses profitably through effective marketing. Um, you 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 touched on arriving in B2B tech marketing and being surrounded by data, but sometimes missing there being this missing element of like back to the basics of marketing. How are we connecting with these people? um so what have you seen get lost in the data? What does that look like when you come in and there's maybe a really solid data infrastructure in place, or maybe not, but what does it look like to you when, okay, where we're losing these people is in that messaging, that connection piece?
So, just for the record, I know I'm not the usual guest on this podcast. I would say I'm very pro data. And for your question, I think that the first thing that sometimes gets lost is meaning.
Mm,
Data tells you what's happening, right? We're going to use data to know what worked, what not, but might not really tell you why, why it matters, or how it feels from the customer side of things. So I think meaning is the first thing that sometimes, you need this like human being behind, or this emotional thinking, emotional intelligence in order to understand what this data means. And I would say that, and that takes me a little bit to more of like the creative areas of marketing, that sometimes what's missing with data is courage.
mm,
I think
okay.
that, the more data you have, it's easier to, justify the safe decisions, right? We did it before, it worked, that's the industry trend. And then we're going to optimize what already exists, instead of creating something new. So I think that data is great for optimization, but it doesn't always help you decide what's actually worth doing. So
Mhm.
you can, based on the data, you can do again something that worked before or worked for a different company, but it might not be, something that's worth doing. And I think that we should have data. We
Mhm.
should keep tracking the data of everything we do, but we just need to give it a more creative meaning sometimes, and
Mhm.
with some courage. So even if
Mhm.
we don't see it clearly in the data, doesn't mean we should not do this, especially in marketing.
That makes so much sense to me. And the way that is handled successfully in from a data-driven approach is an acceptance that the data can only show us so much. We can kind of map out, here's what we definitely know, here's what we think we know, here's what we definitely don't know, here's what we think we don't know. And, marketing, there are these sort of two extremes. One is only the things that we can track are the actual impacts of marketing. The other is you'll never know what marketing's doing for you. You just kind of have to do it. It's a necessary evil is kind of the way that comes across, is like, I don't know, but it seems like we have to do it. And the reality is it's something in the middle, right? You want to use that data, but I love that we talk about it as like managing risk, but I love framing it as you have to be courageous, like, to take those risks and to jump into things where you don't know if it's going to work, and you might not even know yet how you'll know if it's working or not, because it might be harder to track. But, how can you manage the risk enough to make that worth it and make that leap worth it? And it does take courage. I love that. Um, I think the other thing that you're touching on here that really resonates for me is if all you're looking at is data and numbers and taking this very analytical and calculated approach, you are sort of getting closer to, I think, where we're headed with AI in marketing, where I have a team member who speaks really brilliantly about this, and he talks about how, you know, um, AI in marketing and automated marketing tools, it's not like, oh, this is suddenly raising the level of marketing. It's people in the bottom 50% are, all of that is sort of floating up towards the middle. Like it's yes, a rising tide that's lifting many, many boats, but not all boats. And one of the risks is that everybody's using the same sets of data to do their marketing. You need that creativity, that, human connection to stand out in among now a bunch of people who maybe previously didn't have access to the platforms that they can now access and utilize easily within their teams. But just playing the game doesn't spell success. Like, now it's getting more and more competitive with AI in the mix, right? And so um this creative and human centric approach, and I want to talk more about the emotional piece too, is going to be, I think, more critical than ever. So it's fun talking with you. It feels like a very yin and yang situation here, because I am definitely a numbers first person, but, we run into that like, oh, wait, maybe, I've been guilty of this. I don't know, like the message. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Put in the core value props and that's whatever. And then if you can take the time and be really curious about, like, well, no, but like, who is my audience and what do they care about? And how do we say this in a way that actually speaks to them? You can have the best analytics and the best strategy in the world, and it's not going to pan out for you. So, um, do you have advice for someone trying to figure out what resonates for their audience, trying to figure out, like, trying to take that courageous leap so that it isn't just like pick a direction and jump? Like, oh, no, like, still think about it, presumably. Don't just do something random with conviction. Like, how do you develop a strategy around, which maybe is like you're too analytical about this and you need to chill, but how do you develop a strategy around creating an emotional connection with your audience?
So I think it starts with the audience. I think that understanding your target audience, the people that will actually make the decision, and it can be the user, but then it can also be the buyer. Some companies, they have multiple personas they need to market to, but I think the first step, let's say I'm jumping in to a new company, the first thing I would actually want to see is the data. I want to
Hmm.
see what they did before, what worked for them. I think I need this ground in order to develop something new. But then I will try and talk either with customers or, listen to sales calls or talk with the salespeople, customer success, support team to understand what's going on. Sometimes, we keep saying that, the marketers are the one representing the audience, like the voice of the customer. But then, especially in B2B tech, there's so many people in the company talking with the customers. And I think putting aside the presentations, the slides, the branding, and really understand, what are the nerves you can
Mm,
touch,
mm,
what are the things potential customer would say on a sales call about the competitor they're using right now, or about what's missing in this company offering, will
mhm,
really help to understand the needs. And once you have this, like, one or couple of insights, um, it doesn't really it's the same for B2C and B2B as I see it, because you want to say something that will make your audience stop, listen, because they get so many, you know, messaging campaigns around that. You can't really open, social media without, someone's trying to sell you something. So
mhm.
say something that will make them say, oh, right. It's me. They're inside my head right now.
Yep,
How
yep,
come? You know, even if this person you know, is not ready to buy your product, you'll still get to be part of their um, set of options, right? You'll
mm,
be in their top of mind. So I think, to your question, I would start with the consumer insight or customer insight in our case of B2B, and then try and see what's going on around this company. What about competitors? What do they say? You
mhm,
don't really want to say the same thing as someone else's, and you really need to know your position in the market. Sometimes I will work with the market leader, and then they can basically say whatever they want. But sometimes I will go with the underdog, and they will have to say something that will look more, you know, will have to get more courage, going
yeah,
back to that, have to be more creative in order to get their attention. Sometimes you
mm,
don't have enough budget in order to make the noise. So it have to be something, in your copy or in the message or in the, media you choose. So I think, again, starting with the audience always, I think that one of the things I see in B2B is that they will start with a product. What do I do? I sell software, you know. What do? You solve this problem to our customers, right?
mhm,
So I think this is something I, I try to to deliver in my work with companies. It's really tempting to talk about your product, about the technology, but you need to talk about your audience problems first.
yeah,
That's what will catch their attention.
yeah. And I know, for me personally, some of the marketers I know who are best at doing that kind of work have some sort of a background in psychology, right? They have some, like, I am curious about how human brains work. I, have a high EQ. I have, this interest in other people. And I can imagine you coming into an organization. You aren't, a full-time employee within that group. You're probably doing a lot of internal marketing as well. Like, you need to pull people together on the same page, and, similar to, I want to understand our audience and our customer. You have this other audience and customer of, like, your colleagues while you're there. So how does that pan out? Are you marketing to your your colleagues? Is it the same, or is it something different?
Definitely. I think that as a marketer, you market internally and externally, and you'll have to market internally first in order to get the budget sometimes.
Mhm.
I think that, I think that, talking about data, I think also marketers will probably use their data to, for internal purposes before even putting a campaign around that. Because I think that, you know, I can't even tell you the number of times I was asked to prove the ROI of a marketing campaign,
Mhm.
and you would, as a brand marketer, I would tell you that it's so it's almost impossible to measure the emotional connection a customer or a consumer has with a brand, with a product, with a service, and try to tell it to the CFO or the CEO. And I think that we're very lucky to have a lot of data today and being able to track if it's brand awareness, and doing segmentations online on our specific audiences, knowing who's coming in to our websites, who's, just um, scrolling all around and showing interest. But I think that um, especially when marketing or the CMO doesn't always have a sit around the table. You'll
Mm.
see the CEO, you'll see the CFO, CRO, CPO, sometimes head of customer services or so on. I think, and while this is the person who actually delivers the message outside of the organization, so I think to your point, yes, we have to market internally first. We have to represent the customer, and we have to also um, I don't want to say teach, but it's like getting, the rest of the management to understand that it takes some patience in order to see the results. And the marketing funnel, it's not just because, there's a reason for, the marketing funnel having so many different steps.
Mhm.
And I think what I find many times is that even when we run an awareness campaign for a customer, knowing that most of the audience are not even aware to this company, and whenever someone's clicks in or putting in their info, the sales team are about to jump in and call them to try and sell, and it's so hard to say no, wait, it's
They
just
just met you.
they just met you, don't go all the way, you're
Yeah.
going to scare them off. So let's start, schmoozing them a little bit. Let's send them some content. Let's offer them, to join a webinar and so on. And we have to be patient and we have to make sure they're not dropping. So I
Mhm.
think it's part of this like, internal campaigns we have to run as marketers. And going back to the type of companies I work with, um, many they don't have this marketer to say
Yeah.
that, and
Yeah.
therefore they might they might have like this poor young marketer who's there to execute and do everything the CRO or the CEO will tell them to do, but they won't see any results
Mhm.
because they don't have this like long-term planning,
Mhm.
knowing that it's step by step. It's a relationship we're trying to build here,
Mhm.
and it's not a speed dating that clicks
Yep.
or not. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it takes, the experience to know that you have to be patient. Like the more senior you get in marketing, the more you realize like you just need to not freak out for a little bit. Like especially in B2B with longer sales cycles, with buying committees, with multiple people potentially involved in a higher value, longer term deal, there's, it can take months, like years for what you're doing to actually translate into value and results for the business. And I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen companies let's just keep trying new things over, like iterating so quickly that they never know what worked, like what was actually effective because they're so impatient to, I want to see these results now. Like I have these goals and I'm curious when people bring you on, if it is typically because they feel like we're behind on this or we have this acute issue we need help solving right now. And often as the marketer, if you arrive into that in, a B2B SaaS setting, for example, it's, we're behind on our revenue goals and we're halfway through the year. So we need to adjust marketing. And it's like, well, your pipeline, your sales cycle is 6 months. So the ship's kind of sailed on this year. Like we'll do what we can, but we need to be like laying the groundwork for the future. And so, um, again, I'm fascinated by the sort of fractional approach and how those relationships begin. So I'm curious if I'm right. Can you just let me know, like, when you
Yeah, yeah,
come in, is it
absolutely.
usually like something's on fire, I need help with this, or are people being more proactive in bringing you on board?
So it can be, for many reasons. Sometimes they just get, they got an investment, so now they can
Mm,
actually afford marketing,
mm,
or they have they have a VC who just purchased the company and expecting them to hire a marketing person. But sometimes, as you just said, it's like we have to hit our targets. Many times when I get in, talking about those targets, I would actually realize they don't track marketing leads, for
mm,
example.
okay.
Oh, and when I would ask why and where did it come from, they would say, why does it matter? Lead is a lead, So it came
Yeah.
from the
The
CRO,
universe.
a CRO referral or from,
Okay.
a BDR or anything like that. And I think, or for example, they just count like everything coming from their website as marketing, which is true. But do you know which page? Do you know, like, if they visited the site multiple times and then they're warm enough to get in touch with them, or did they see us in an event? Did they see a post on LinkedIn? Like, they don't have this detailed data. And I think this is another thing, it's many times companies are they run in order to get more deals, and that's exactly what they need to do, and they have great salespersons, they can actually do that, and then they need, run like rabbits, and then they do need the marketing team to start, slowly building, building the grounds in order to track and understand what's going on, um, and even understanding how to tag,
Mhm.
tag
Yep,
this lead. It's
yep,
so simple, and it's like behind the scenes work of, the rev ops or someone else, but someone needs to sit with them defining the different type of leads and opportunities. And only after that, they'll be able to say, oh, wow, this event we're investing in like 3 years already. It's so expensive and we're not getting any leads because it's not even our audience. But, someone told us to go there because, it's a big event, it's exactly our it's where we should be, but
mhm,
the audience is not there, and, events are so expensive. You can do something else. You can take this money and host an event with all your open opportunities, for example, right?
yep,
And
yep,
to warm the relationship with them. So I think it's like it could be, again, bring me more leads. I need to close the deal, but I most of the times I think that they do understand that it takes a while. I mean, who
mhm,
will understand if not, the CRO or the CEO? What's the sales cycle um, length? But I think that it's not like I need to go in and tell them, oh, you're crazy. It doesn't work like that. Usually, I need to go in and ask them to do some rev up work with me, about tagging leads, understanding where they're coming from, understanding like the investment,
mm,
translated into, cost per lead, and
mhm,
then making some tough decisions about, do we need to
yeah,
do it or not?
yeah. Hadar, for someone who is a self-proclaimed not data-driven marketer, you said an awful lot about data-driven marketing. Thanks today. Let's go ahead and wrap up there, listeners. If you want to learn more about Hadar and her work as a fractional CMO, details will be in the show notes. Otherwise, Hadar, thank you so much for joining me today on Data Planet.
Thank you for having me, Emma.